The woman at the next table leaned over and pointed at the ribbons on my chest, at the blue one with the gold edge, and asked me what that one was for. My husband's sister answered before I could. She did not lower her voice. She lifted her chin toward the ribbons the way you point out a stain on somebody's collar. That's a costume. She just married into that uniform. 20 minutes before she said that a photograph had fallen out of my wallet at the coat check, and I still did not know who was holding it. The ballroom was on the water on the third floor of a hotel that smelled like steam from the kitchen and cold shrimp from the buffet. There were chandeliers, and there were round tables with numbers on little brass stands, and I was at 19 next to the door the servers came through. I want to say there were 180 people in that room. Ruthann says 178. She was not even there, and she is probably right. I did not answer Maeve. I set my glass down and turned it half a turn, so the hotel logo faced out because that is what my hands do when the rest of me needs a second. Then I sat down. Under the table, my left hand went along the gaps between my fingers, counting them 1 to 4 and back again, which is a habit I have never bothered to explain to anybody. The woman who had asked the question laughed a little. Not a mean laugh, the kind people use when they are not sure yet whether a thing was a joke, and they would like somebody to tell them. Nobody told her. I sat there in a jacket I had not taken out of the closet in 6 years at a fundraiser my sister-in-law had spent 9 months building, and I let it stand. That was the part I would have to sit with later. Not what Maeve said, what I did with the 4 seconds after. 9 days later, Maeve Halloran pushed her binder across a bank conference table and walked out to her car by herself. I was not in that room. Brendan was 2 floors down waiting to drive her home, and he is the one who told me. I am going to tell you the whole thing because I have had a year to look at it, and I still find pieces I had the wrong way around. But before I do, if you are here tonight, tap the heart and tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is where you are. I read every one of them. It matters more than you would think sitting where I sit at 3 in the morning. Here is what I knew at table 19, and here is what I did not. I knew my sister-in-law had just said that to a stranger out loud at her own event. I did not know that somewhere in that building, a man I had spoken 11 words to was standing with my photograph in his left hand, waiting to finish a speech. I did not know what he was going to do with it. My name is Tally Furtado, and everybody on the ramp called me Tally because I counted out loud. Master Sergeant Air Transportation, 15 years of loading airplanes with people who could not carry themselves. I still count the chairs in a room before I sit down in one. I did it that night at the hotel in the lobby before anybody said anything to me about anything. These days, I run nights at a freight terminal 40 minutes from the house. Same work, smaller airplanes, nobody bleeding. My husband's sister was working that ballroom with a clipboard. She did not need sliding place cards 2 inches to the left, so the photographs would sit right. Maeve has run that fundraiser for 9 years. She knows which spouse goes where, which 2 dentists cannot be seated together, which table gets the view. She had a pen behind her ear and another one in her hand, and she used neither. My husband, Brendan, stood at the bar with his hand flat on the wood, which is what he does when he is deciding whether a thing is worth a fight. I have watched that hand for 6 years. It goes flat, it stays flat, and then he says something pleasant and everybody moves on. He is a kind man. I want that on the record early because of what comes later. Kevin Sweeney, who married into this family 11 years before I did, told me my table number twice before I asked him once. Kevin is Maeve's husband and the co-chair of the whole thing, and he carries the seating chart around folded into quarters in his jacket pocket. 19, he said, by the kitchen door. 19. And then there is Ruthann Pike, who is not in any of these pictures because she was not invited and would not have gone. Ruthann Pike runs nights at the freight terminal where I work now, and she pressed my service dress jacket on the ironing board in the dispatch office because I do not own an iron, and she knows it. She pressed it standing up with a cigarette she was not smoking behind her ear, and she did the sleeves twice. That is the room. That is who was in it and who was not. The last time I put that jacket on it was for a wedding, and I did not touch it again for 6 years. The reason I finally put it back on is the last person on that list at 3 in the morning in a room with 1 broken chair. Maeve set the tables herself every year in the church basement on a Tuesday night 3 weeks out. I went with her once because Brendan asked me to and because I did not have a reason not to. She had the floor plan taped to a folding table, and she moved 2 name cards 3 separate times, and each time she stepped back and looked at them from a different angle, the way you look at a painting you are hanging. She read the program out loud while she worked testing how it sounded. The money that year was going to a hospitality house, a place where families stay when somebody they belong to is in the military hospital for weeks at a stretch. Free rooms, free laundry, a kitchen that runs on volunteers overnight, so people coming off a bad day at the ward have somewhere to eat at 2 in the morning. "That's the best thing in my file this year," Maeve said, and she meant it, and she was right. Then a woman came down the basement stairs with a box of votives, and Maeve took the box from her and said in the same breath that she had almost enlisted herself back before all this. Air Force. She had the paperwork and everything. But she had other plans, she said, and she laughed like it was a small thing that had happened to somebody else. I did not know then what I know now. I only knew that she told that story about once a year, always to somebody new, always in that voice. Maeve turned 43 in March, and they did it at her house in the backyard with a tent because it rained. Somebody's cousin, a man in a good coat, who I had met twice, asked me what I did in the Air Force. Brendan got there first. He does not do it to be cruel. He does it fast the way you catch a glass before it goes off the counter. She does shipping for the Air Force, he said. The man nodded. And I opened my mouth because there was a version of the sentence that was true and took about 9 seconds, and I had it right there ready. Then I looked at the tent and at the rain coming down the side of it, and at Maeve, 40 feet away, watching us the way she watches a table she has already set. And I made it smaller than Brendan had. Mostly paperwork, I said. Everybody nodded. Somebody asked about the caterer. It was over in 4 seconds. The same 4 seconds I would sit in 9 months later at table 19. In the parking lot afterward, Brendan held my coat while I got my arm in, and he said, "You don't have to prove anything to them." He meant it as a kindness. I took it as one. I have thought about that sentence more than any other sentence anybody has ever said to me. Here's the thing I owe him, and I am going to put it here instead of saving it because he has earned it. At our wedding, Brendan threw out his speech. He had written one. I saw it on the kitchen counter for 2 weeks, getting longer, and I had asked him, please do not make this about me, and the Air Force do not do the thing where somebody stands up and says my wife is a hero, I will walk out of my own reception. So he stood up in front of 110 people, and he said he was going to read 4 names and that most of us would not know them, and that his wife knew them, and that was enough of a reason. Then he read them. 4 names one at a time, no explanation after. He had practiced the pronunciations for a month with a folded piece of paper in his truck, and he got all 4 right, including Vo, which people get wrong, including people who should not. He sat down. He did not look at me. His hand went flat on the tablecloth. There is one more thing about Maeve, and I have gone back and forth about whether to tell you, and I am going to tell you. After my second deployment, there was a stretch where I did not sleep. Not the movie version. Just awake at 3 every night, sitting in the kitchen with the light off. One of those nights, I typed out a whole paragraph, the kind you only type at 3 in the morning, and I sent it to the wrong Halloran. Maeve drove 2 hours and 10 minutes. She did not knock on the house. She texted me the name of an all-night place off the state road, and she was already in the booth when I got there. She ordered me eggs I did not eat. She did not ask me a single question about it. She talked about a contractor who had ruined her mother's stairs for 2 hours until it got light. And she never told anybody. Not her husband, not Brendan. Nobody in that family has ever mentioned it to me, and I have listened for it for years. The photograph was taken on a Tuesday at a field somewhere in southern Afghanistan, on a night I did not think would be a night anybody photographed. We worked under red light because white light carries. 2 in the morning cold in a way that surprises people who have only heard about the heat. Senior Master Sergeant Hollis Kemp was the one who trained me, and Kemp had exactly one speech, which he gave in pieces, 1 piece at a time over about a year. That night, he gave me the piece I kept. Nobody rides home alone, he said. I thought it was a procedure. I honestly did. I thought he was telling me about the paperwork, about the manifest, about how every single thing that goes on that airplane has a name attached, and a person attached, and a signature attached. And if the name gets separated from the thing, then somebody at the other end is standing on a tarmac with nothing. I was telling me a procedure. He was also telling me something else, and I did not hear it for 6 years. In the morning, somebody with a camera came out and lined us up under the wing and took one shot, and about a week later there was a stack of 4x6 prints in the shop, one for each of us, and nobody made a speech about it. I took mine and put it behind my ID in my wallet. I never took it out again. Not once in 6 years. I could have told you exactly where it was at any moment of any day, and I could not have told you why I needed to know that. The dispatch office at the terminal has one window and it faces the yard, so all night you are looking at the backs of trailers. There is a chair in there with a bad caster. It has been in there longer than I have. Everybody rolls it out of the way and nobody throws it out. And there is a vending machine in the hallway that only takes dimes, which is not a thing anybody planned. It just started doing that about 2 years ago, and the company that owns it has been coming out to fix it since spring. So everybody on nights keeps a handful of dimes in the change tray of their truck. Ruth Ann keeps hers in a film canister. I have never asked her where a person gets a film canister. Anyway, 3 in the morning a Tuesday, waiting on a truck out of Worcester that was running 90 minutes down. Ruth Ann put an envelope on the desk in front of me and went back to her board. It was the invitation. Kevin had mailed it to the terminal, which meant Kevin had looked up where I worked, which was more thought than I expected from Kevin. "You going?" Ruth Ann said. She was writing a trailer number and did not look up. I said I supposed I was going, since Brendan's sister ran it. Ruth Ann wrote another number. Then she said, "Mostly paperwork." I did not say anything. She had heard it from me. 3 weeks after Maeve's birthday, I had told her the whole story myself, right there at that desk, waiting on a different truck, and I had told it like it was funny. I did the voice. I did the cousin in the good coat. I got to the punchline, which was me saying it about myself, and I laughed. Ruth Ann had not laughed. She had written down a trailer number and said, "Huh." That was 8 months earlier, and she had been holding it since. "Who taught you to say that?" she said now, not sharp. She asked it the way she asks about weather. And I said the thing you say, which is that it is easier and it is a party and nobody at a party wants the long version. Ruth Ann put her pen down. So I took out my wallet and I took out my ID, and behind it was the photograph, and I put it on the desk in the dispatch office at 3 in the morning and turned it around so it faced her. First time in 6 years, anybody had looked at it but me. 6 people under a wing, red light, everybody squinting because the guy with the camera had made us wait. "Kemp," I said, and I put my finger on him. "Ojeda, me, bracket, Tunstall, Vo." Ruth Ann looked at it for a long time. She has a husband in the ground who built bridges for the army, and she does not talk about him either, so she knew what she was being handed. 22 that night, I said. 11 hours. She did not ask 22 what. She just nodded once and slid it back to me. And that was when it came apart, sitting in a broken chair in a room that smells like diesel and old coffee, which is not where you plan for it to happen. Because Kemp told me nobody rides home alone. And for 6 years, I let a smaller version of me ride home alone every single time. Every christening, every backyard tent, every good coat. They did not get it wrong on their own. I handed them the smaller version myself. I cried in front of Ruth Ann Pike for about 90 seconds. It is the only time in this whole story that I did, and I want to be honest that it was not dignified and it was not a movie. It was the ugly kind with the hiccup in it, and she let it happen and did not touch me, which was the correct decision, and I have thought about it since. Then she asked what I was going to wear. I said I had a jacket. I had not put that jacket on since the wedding, and I did not want to put it on now. Wearing it felt like saying something out loud that I had spent 6 years saying quietly. Ruth Ann got up and pulled the ironing board out from behind the file cabinet. Before I keep going, if somebody has ever told a smaller version of your life while you sat there and let it stand, say so below. I would like to know I am not the only one who did that. She did the sleeves twice. She said the sleeves are what people see when you are holding a drink. And I drove home at 5 in the morning with a pressed service dress jacket hanging in the back of the truck, thinking I had already done the hard part. Brendan did not open the car door right away. We were in the hotel parking garage 3rd level, and he had turned the engine off, and neither of us moved. He reached over and fixed the zipper at my collar, which had gone crooked somewhere between the truck and the garage, and he did it the way you fix a kid's collar without asking. Then a song came on that he has known his entire life, and he sang along, and he got the words wrong, not close. He had a whole different line in there, one that does not scan one. He has apparently been singing since he was 9 years old, and when I told him, he argued about it. I laughed until I had to put my hand over my mouth. "You don't have to prove anything to them," he said, still smiling, and he meant it the way he always means it. 19 minutes later, his sister said what she said. The coat check is a marble counter in the lobby, with a white paint scrape along the front edge like somebody caught it with a luggage cart, and nobody has bothered about it. I have thought about that scrape more than any other object in this story. I pulled my ID to get the ticket because the girl wanted a name, and I never remember whether I am Furtado or Halloran on these lists. The photograph came out with it and went face down on the carpet. A man in service dress bent and picked it up. He turned it over, and he did not hand it back. He looked at it about 4 seconds longer than is polite. I saw the 2 stars on his shoulder before I saw his face. 15 years teaches you to read the rank first and the person second, and it does not switch off, and I would not know how to switch it off. "Sir," I said, and I put my hand out. He did not give it to me. He said, "Ma'am, where did you get this?" I had my mouth open to answer, and a woman with a radio came in between us, half a step the way people do when they have been told to move somebody along and they are running out of runway. She said they were holding him at the head table. He put one finger up. He still had my photograph in his left hand. "Do you have a minute after I speak?" he said. I said, "Yes, sir." Then Kevin was at my elbow. Kevin had the seating chart out folded in quarters, and he said, 19. And then he said it again by the kitchen door, 19, and he walked me in with his hand not quite on my back. I went into that ballroom with my photograph in a 2-star general's left hand, and I did not ask for it. You do not ask for it. I do not know how to explain that to somebody who has not worn it. You do not walk up to a man with 2 stars in a hotel lobby and say, "Excuse me, sir, that is mine." So I sat down at 19 with an empty place in my wallet, and I told myself I would find him after. He asked me something else at that coat check right before the woman with the radio cut in. I have spent a year trying to get it back, and I cannot. There was a program on every table 1 at every place setting, folded in half and standing up like a little tent. Ours were there too, at 19 next to the kitchen door, with the name of the hospitality house printed across the front and a photograph of the porch, and inside under the schedule, one line that said the evening's remarks would be given by Major General Curtis Ledlow, United States Air Force. I read that line, and I did not connect it to a marble counter in the lobby because I had spent the walk from the coat check thinking about my wallet. I read mine twice because I did not know anybody at my table. The woman on my left had been trying all through the salad to place me. She had gotten as far as knowing I was somebody's wife. She leaned over and pointed at the ribbons and asked about the blue one with the gold edge. Maeve was 2 steps behind her, with the clipboard doing what she does, counting heads against the chart. She answered without stopping. She lifted her chin at the ribbons. "That's a costume. She just married into that uniform." I have replayed the room. The woman on my left laughed the way you laugh when you are waiting to be told. A man across from me looked at his bread plate. Kevin, standing at the end of the table, with the chart, folded it into quarters again, even though it was already folded into quarters. Maeve kept walking. She had 11 more tables to count. I do not think she looked at me once during the sentence, which is a detail I did not notice at the time and cannot stop noticing now. I set my glass down and turned it half a turn. The speech was 11 minutes, and I could not tell you one word of it. He thanked the committee. There was applause. And then, instead of going back to the head table, he came down off the platform and started walking through the tables. A room of 178 people will track that. Everybody wants to know where a 2-star general is going, and everybody who thinks he might be coming toward them sits up a little. Ledlow had my photograph in his left hand. He came all the way across that ballroom, past the head table, past the dance floor they had roped off past table 11 and table 14 to 19 by the kitchen door. He did not salute me. Nobody salutes anybody in a hotel ballroom, and it would have been wrong twice over, and I want to say that plainly because I know what people expect at this point in a story like this. I took out reading glasses. He put the photograph face up on the tablecloth in front of me and set 2 fingers on the edge of it, the way you hold down a map on a windy day. "Ma'am," he said, "which one is you?" I pointed. And then my hand kept going, 'cause that is what my hand does, and I counted them out loud like I was reading a manifest. Kemp, Ojeda, me, Brackett, Tunstall, Vo. I was quiet for a second. Then Major General Curtis Ledlow pulled out the empty chair beside me and sat down in it in his service dress at table 19 next to the kitchen door. "You counted them in load order," he said. I said I supposed I had. "How many did you move that night?" 22 liters, I said. 11 hours. I answered before I thought about it. That is the only reason it came out at all. He turned the photograph a little so the people across the table could see it, and he talked to them. Not to me in an ordinary voice, like a man explaining where he grew up. He said there is a print of that photograph blown up in a hallway he walks through most days of his life. He said he knew that field. He said he had come out of it more than once at night, and that when you come out of a place like that on a litter, you do not see the airplane and you do not see the crew, you see red light and somebody's hands. And he said the people in that photograph were the ones with the hands. Then he looked at me and he said, Master Sergeant Furtado. He said that I had been the last American on the ground for 22 people who were not able to stand up on one night, and that this was one night of a great many, and that he was glad to know my name. He put his hand out and I shook it. Then he picked the photograph up off the tablecloth and gave it back to me with both hands, and he stood up and he pushed the chair in and he went back to his table. Nobody stood up. Nobody applauded. Somebody at 15 was still talking about a golf trip through the whole thing. The woman on my left turned her chair about 40 degrees toward me and stayed that way. Maeve had stopped counting, somewhere around table 70. She said one sentence. She said, well, she never talks about it. It landed in a quiet spot. It just sat there in the middle of the table with the bread and the little program tents, and nobody picked it up, and Kevin looked down at the seating chart in his hands like there was something on it he had gotten wrong. 9 days later, she pushed a binder across a table in a bank conference room, and Brendan was 2 floors down, waiting. Monday morning, 9 o'clock, 2nd floor of the branch on Main Street. The room with the long table and the whiteboard. Nobody erases. 4 people from the committee and 1 carafe of coffee. Brendan had driven her because her car was in for an inspection sticker, and he sat downstairs in the lobby with a magazine about boats for an hour and 10 minutes. The chair of the board asked for the binder back. That is the whole thing. That is what it looks like. There is no speech in it. She said the spring hospital catering contract was going back out to bid, and she said the committee wanted to look at rotating the event chair, and she used the word refresh twice. 2 of them went out to the hallway for coffee partway through and did not come back in. Maeve pushed the binder across the table. 9 years of floor plans, dietary cards, the vendor list, the phone number of the man who does the lighting, and answers for nobody else. She had built that binder the way some people build a house. She said thank you, and she said she understood, and she came down the stairs, and she did not cry in front of my husband, and she asked him to stop at the pharmacy on the way home. Maeve told him the whole thing, in the car start to finish, in the 12 minutes between the bank and the pharmacy. In the flat voice you use when you are reciting something to keep from feeling it. That is how he knew about the word refresh, and about the 2 who went out for coffee and did not come back. Brendan told me all of it that night, sitting on the end of the bed with his shoes still on. And what I felt was not what I had spent 9 days expecting to feel. I kept thinking about a booth off the state road and a plate of eggs going cold in front of me, and a woman talking about her mother's ruined stairs for 2 hours at 4 in the morning so that I would not have to say anything. She drove 2 hours and 10 minutes for me and never told a soul. Both things are true. I have stopped trying to make them cancel each other out. They just sit there. Kevin took longer because Kevin's world runs on Sundays. The following Sunday, after the 10 o'clock in the parking lot behind the church, 3 men he has played golf with since before he was married were standing by the tailgate of one of their trucks the way they stand every week. He walked over. They finished up. One of them clapped him on the arm and said they would see him, and the 4 of them went to 4 different cars. The sponsor table, his company buys for the fall banquet, went into somebody else's name that month. Nobody called him about it. He found out from the printed program the same way I found out most things in that family. That Tuesday morning, he was parked outside Brendan's mother's house at 6:45, same as he has been every Tuesday for 6 years, to drive her to the eye doctor, and then to the other doctor, and then to the diner she likes. He has never once mentioned it at a dinner table. Not when it would have helped him. Not that week when it would have helped him a lot. I did not know about the Tuesdays until Brendan's mother told me herself, and she only told me because she assumed I already knew. Sunday night into Monday, 1 in the morning, our kitchen. The hood light over the stove was the only thing on. Brendan was standing at the sink with the water not running. He said it again. He said, "You don't have to prove anything to them." I was not defending Maeve. He was not defending himself. He was doing the only thing he knows how to do at 1 in the morning, with the water off, which is to make a thing smaller so it will fit through the door. I did not argue with him. There was nothing in that sentence to argue with, which is exactly why it has worked on me for 6 years. I got my wallet off the counter, and I took the photograph out, and I put it on the kitchen table under the hood light, and I told him who everybody was. Kemp, who had one speech and gave it in pieces, and who is the only one of the 5 of them still above ground in Alabama with a boat he does not take out. Ojeda, who could not sleep on an airplane and slept anywhere else, including standing up. Brackett, whose wife sent enough coffee for the whole shop and addressed the box to all of us by name. Tunstall, who was 19 and had a plan for a landscaping business and used to describe the truck he was going to buy in a level of detail that made you want to leave the room. And Vo. 4 of them. The 4 Brendan read at our wedding in the order he read them. He listened to all of it. He did not say anything helpful because there is nothing helpful to say, and to his credit, he did not try. When I was done, he asked me one question. He asked why I had never told him. And I said because he was always faster than me, and because I let him be, and because after a while it was easier to be the wife of a man who explains things than to be the person the thing happened to. He put his hand flat on the table. It stayed there a long time. He has not answered a question about me since. Not one, not at a christening, not at his mother's, not at the pharmacy, when a woman recognized me from the fundraiser and asked. He stands there with his hand somewhere, and he lets the silence go on until I fill it, and sometimes I take too long, and he lets it be too long. That is what it cost him. He does not get to catch the glass anymore. A month after the gala. Ruth Ann told me somebody new had signed up for the night kitchen at the hospitality house, 3 nights a week. She would not tell me who, and she would not look at me when she said it. 6 in the morning on a Saturday, the terminal lot fog, coming off the water and sitting on the trailers. Bay 4 was up, and the yard truck was beeping somewhere behind me. Maeve was standing next to her car with a box in her arms. Photographs from the gala. Prints somebody had ordered, and nobody had come to collect, and she had been carrying them around in her trunk for a month and finally had somewhere to put them, which was the recycling dumpster behind a freight terminal at 6 in the morning where nobody would see her do it. She had a hairnet in her coat pocket, not folded, just shoved in there. 3 nights a week, the kitchen at the hospitality house. In at 10, out at 4. No lanyard, no committee, no photographs, nobody from the board. She feeds people coming off a bad day on a ward who cannot say much and do not want to be asked anything. The best thing in her file, and she is in it through the back door now in a hairnet at 2 in the morning. She did not apologize. I want to be clear about that because I know how these stories usually go, and this one does not go that way. She has never said one word to me about Table 19, and I do not believe she ever will. She said the dumpster was full. I told her to use the one by Bay 4. She stood there a second with the box. Nobody rides home alone, I said. She looked at me like I had said it in another language, which I had in a way. Kemp meant a manifest. I meant her. Then Brendan pulled in to get me, because my truck was in the shop, and Maeve put the box in the dumpster by Bay 4 and drove off toward the state road. On the way home, I asked him if he still had the 4 names. He said them, all 4 out loud in the truck, and he got them right, including Vo. You were right, I told him. I don't have to prove anything to them. I just don't need you to say it for me anymore. His hand went flat on the wheel and stayed there, and he nodded, and we did not talk the rest of the way. There is one more piece, and it is small. Standing in that lot. When Maeve got in her car, I turned around and walked towards Bay 4. I did not check. I did not turn back to see whether she was watching me go, and I did not stand there and wait to find out what her face was doing. I was 200 feet away with my hand on the door of the office before I understood that I had not checked. 16 years old to 36, every room I ever walked out of, I checked. That is the whole thing that changed. It does not look like much written down. 3 things I know now that I did not know at Table 19. When you let somebody tell a smaller story about you, you are not keeping the peace. You are paying for it in installments, and the bill comes anyway. The people who need you to be less are usually carrying something they never got to be. That explains them. It does not excuse them, and it is not your job to hold it. You do not owe anyone the whole file. You do owe yourself the truth of it out loud in your own voice at least once. Tell me the name of the person who kept you honest. I will read every one.